Have you ever wondered why so many government programs fail time after time again, despite the amount of money they spend? And remember, this is your money they're spending, not their own. I want to share an interesting concept that's been around for years, yet rarely discussed, that's really opened a lot of people's eyes when they hear it. So stick with me. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Hi, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Uncommon Logic, where our goal is to provide unique insight to important topics that can and will affect your finances and your life. I'm out here celebrating my birthday on a beautiful run along the American River here in Auburn, California. It's absolutely stunning, as you can see behind me. An amazing day. I wanted to start today by taking a look at our public educational system. And let's be honest, our public educational system has failed and continues to do so despite the ever-growing amount of money they spend per student. And let me be clear, this is no attack on the hardworking teachers and many of the people doing what they can to support our students. Sadly, many of these people, especially the teachers, end up paying for school supplies themselves out of their own pockets just to keep their classrooms operating. It's unbelievable, actually. But I will say, more money to this problem is not the answer, despite what the politicians are saying. And here are the stats. The U.S. spends more money on education than any other country in the world, but our students are lagging behind academically. In 2017, the U.S. spent $12,800 per student on public education. But despite all that spending, our students in the U.S. have struggled. Pew Research tells us in 2017, the U.S. ranked 38th in math and 24th in science when compared to 71 other countries. And only 2 decades ago, the U.S. education system was 6th internationally, 6th. And now to repeat, 38th in math and 24th in science. The system's broken, and it's not just in education. You can look at any program run, administered, and paid for by the government. Sorry, what I meant was paid for by you and me. They are far from operating efficiently, and it's costing you, all of us, a lot of money in the form of our tax dollars. So I wanted to share a very interesting analysis on why this is the case. By design, these government programs do not and cannot effectively do what they are intended to do, which is providing a quality service at an appropriate cost. And this is precisely why these programs never solve the problems they were created to fix. I mean, on a side note, when was the last time you saw a government program that was created to solve a problem actually solve the problem? I mean, when was the last time you heard a government program announce, today we have accomplished our goal by ending the problem we intended to fix and are therefore closing the program? I'll tell you, I cannot recall a single time when this has happened. And it was President Reagan. He said it brilliantly. He said nothing lasts longer than a temporary government program. I mean, how true is that? So let me turn the page and explain why this is the case. Milton Friedman was and still is considered one of the most prominent economists in this country's history. He won the Nobel Prize in 1976, and The Economist called him the most influential economist of the second half of the 20th century, possibly the entire century. And it was Professor Friedman who famously explained why government-run programs fail to provide quality service at an appropriate cost, which, as I mentioned earlier, is why so many government-funded programs fail to achieve their intended outcomes. So here's how he brilliantly explains this. He says there are 4 ways to spend money. The first way is obvious. You can spend your own money on yourself, right? Makes sense. And when you spend your own money on yourself, you're very careful in what you spend it on. You really watch what you're doing and you make sure you get the biggest bang for your buck. So in this case, both cost and quality are very important to you. The second way to spend money is spending your own money on somebody else. So for example, you can buy a gift for someone or take somebody out for dinner. And when you spend your own money on someone else, you're very careful that you don't spend too much and you try to keep the costs down. You're not as worried about the quality as you would have been if you're spending your own money on yourself. So in this case, the cost of an item is of high importance to you, yet your attention to quality is less. The third way to spend money is when you spend somebody else's money on yourself. So let's say I'm out to lunch and I'm spending my boss's money on an expense account, but I'm spending this money on myself. I'm definitely going to get myself a great lunch, but I'm not necessarily worried about getting the cheapest items on the menu. So in this case, when I'm spending somebody else's money on myself, quality is very important, yet costs are not a high priority. Now, for the fourth and final way to spend money is when you spend somebody else's money on somebody else. And as you may have guessed, this is the government. So let's say you're in charge of distributing money to a school system. Now, most people, they want to do a good job and they want to make good choices, but they're not going to be anywhere near as careful when they're spending somebody else's money on somebody else. Certainly not compared to the first example when they're spending their own money on themselves. And if I spend somebody else's money on somebody else, I'm not concerned about how much it costs, and I'm not so concerned about what I get. So in this case, neither cost or quality is a high priority. In other words, spend all the money you want and move on to the next dysfunctional taxpayer-funded program. Professor Friedman's examples are simple and perfectly to the point. In an environment where we are spending other people's money, in other words, your money, on someone else, they don't maximize the value of the dollar because they simply don't have much personally at stake. Now, there are always caveats to this, of course, particularly in our personal lives. For example, when we're spending our own money purchasing items for loved ones, quality is often more important than cost. But generally speaking, this method of spending other people's money on other people is precisely why our government fails time after time again to provide efficient, cost-effective, and successful programs that gets the job done. So to wrap up, you can make a strong case that the government doesn't really care about cost or quality. Remember, their primary goal is to get reelected, and throwing your money around carelessly is how they do it. And they're great at identifying problems, starting expensive programs, and throwing a ton of money, our money, at them, and then saying, look, see what I did? Now vote for me. Accountability is non-existent in our government, and therefore success is an afterthought, if even a consideration. It's a classic example of confusing activity with accomplishment, and our government is a master at it. And that's why our hard-earned money is wasted year after year. So with that, thanks for tuning in. And remember, your financial future is not a matter of chance. It's a matter of choice. And it's never too late to start your journey to financial freedom and peace of mind. I'm John Macgregor. Oh, and by the way, if you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button below and please include your comments as well. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.